Hey, how's everybody doing? So this recording is going to be about Rico. If many of you have heard that term, Rico or Rico Act. It stands for the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Rico, R-I-C-O. I'm going to go through a little overview here from the United States government regarding Rico and some of the sentencing guidelines and statutes regarding the RICO Act and what it entails. I'm going to go through here. You all can find this yourself. You can go to ussc.gov/guidelines/primers/RICO. If you just search in any search engine, U.S. government RICO or RICO Act, it should pull up the link for this PDF here. So again, this is the RICO Act, the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, May 2021. In parentheses, this primer provides a general overview of statutes, sentencing guidelines, and case law regarding the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, commonly referred to as the RICO Act or simply RICO. This primer focuses primarily on application of the RICO guideline and related sentencing issues. Although the primer identifies some of the key cases and concepts, it is not a comprehensive compilation of authority, nor intended as a substitute for independent research and analysis of primary sources. So, take from that what you wish. Now to the PDF. Now the PDF is about 26 pages long. I'm not going to go through every page. There's just a couple of sections here that I want to touch on. Number one, in the let's see, there's a legal disclaimer there, but just below the legal disclaimer, it outlines some of the topics that violations of this act can apply sentencing to. So I'm going to go through these lists here. It's a short list. There's aggravating and mitigating role adjustments, antitrust offenses. Remember that one, antitrust offenses. Categorical approach, offenses involving commercial sex acts and sexual exploitation of minors, computer crimes, crime victims' rights, criminal history, departures and variances, drug offenses, economic crime victims, fines for organizations, firearms offenses. That's something that I've had to deal with these public servants myself, still am. Immigration offenses, intellectual property offenses, loss calculation under subsection 291.1, 2B1.1, relevant conduct, retroactivity, RICO offenses, selected offenses against the person, and vicar, VICAR, all caps, sexual abuse and failure to register offenses, and supervised release. So those are some of the topics that this guideline goes through. So, according to federal code, prohibited activities are explained and outlined under 18 U.S.C. subsection 1962. See divisions A, B, C, and D. Let's see the definitions, which describes the terms used in these particular codes, are outlined in 18 U.S.C. subsection 1961. We'll be going over a couple of those definitions. And then in 18 U.S.C. subsection 1963, it outlines the criminal penalties for the violations. Let's see, there are double jeopardy considerations for RICO conspiracy and substantive and offenses. let's see. So I think we'll go to the first definition here. Down to page 4. So on page 4, under section B of this primer, it describes 18 U.S.C. subsection 1961 definitions. The first term it gives is racketeering activity. The definition of this term is Rico defines, quote, racketeering activity, end quote, as any crime enumerated in subdivisions A through G of section 1. The listed crimes often are referred to as predicate acts because committing an enumerated crime is the foundation for a RICO offense. Criminal acts committed outside of the United States can serve as RICO predicate offenses, but only to the extent that the predicates alleged in a particular case themselves apply extraterritorially. So that's a definition of racketeering activity. Number 2, pattern of racketeering. A, quote, pattern of racketeering activity, end quote, requires, quote, at least 2 acts of racketeering activity, end quote, one of which occurred after the effective date of the RICO statute, and the last of which occurred within 10 years after the commission of a prior racketeering act. The 10-year limitation excludes any any period of imprisonment, as the Supreme Court has held. Lost my place. As the Supreme Court has held, establishing a pattern of racketeering activity requires more than simply proving 2 racketeering acts with a statutorily prescribed time period. There also must be proof that the racketeering acts are related and amount to or pose a threat of continued criminal activity. Number 3, unlawful debt. The definition of unlawful debt. Rico defines an, quote, unlawful debt, unquote, as a debt, in parentheses A, in parentheses, quote, incurred or contracted in gambling activity which was in violation of, end quote, or unenforceable under, quote, state or federal law in whole or as part as to principal or interest because of the laws relating to usury, and, in parentheses B, in parentheses, which was incurred in connection with gambling in violation of state or federal law. Quote, unlawful debt, end quote, also includes lending money at a rate usurious under state law or federal law. Thus, an unlawful debt is a debt that arises from illegal gambling or loan sharking activities. The prohibition of the collection of unlawful debt encompasses all efforts to collect on a usurious loan, whether by demanding payment in cash or by repossessing property pledged as collateral. While a pattern of racketeering must consist of at least 2 racketeering acts, the collection of an unlawful debt can be predicated on a single occurrence, such as the collection of a single unlawful debt. Now, just real quick, that's exactly what they're doing in the courts. They are racketeering. They're extorting people for money, the beneficiaries of these trusts for money. And in many instances, when the bonds are created, they add a condition to the bond that property or collateral is used as surety. I think that's the right term, surety, if I remember correctly. So not only in many cases are people forced to pay monies out of pocket to get out of the cage or out of the jail that they were put in for all this stuff, and create a contract with another organization to do so. But also, if for whatever reason the court decides or wants to manipulate or fabricate, say that there was a violation of the bond, they can then collect the collateral there. So it's basically what that definition that I just read was explaining. If you go back and listen to it again and maybe think about it for a little bit, you'll comprehend what I'm talking about. Let's see. I find this kind of interesting. They changed the definition of the word person for RICO offenses, or for the RICO Act. And here, number 4, person, definition of person says, for purposes of the RICO Act, a, quote, person, end quote, includes, quote, any individual or entity capable of holding a legal or beneficial interest in property, end quote. So again, these are the word person refers to corporate entities. Even a corporation can have a beneficial interest in property. So none of these terms, individual, entity, legal or beneficial interest in property, none of these terms relate directly to a man or a woman. These are strictly corporate terms, because that's what this law pertains to. This is corporate jurisdiction. Let's see here. Go on past there. So here I'm going to read this real quick. If this screen will cooperate. Give me one sec. Okay, where was I at? Okay, here we go. So, Section C, 18 U.S.C. Subsection 1963, Criminal Penalties. The RICO Act establishes criminal penalties for a violation of Section 1962 pursuant to Section 1963, Division A. A violation of Section 1962 is punishable by a fine, a term of imprisonment not to exceed 20 years, or both. If the RICO violation is based on racketeering activity that is charged as a predicate act and has a maximum penalty of imprisonment, the maximum penalty for the RICO violation is also life imprisonment. In addition, Section 1963, Division A, mandates forfeiture of all property to the United States, irrespective of any provisions of state law. This requirement includes any property interest acquired or maintained in violation of Section 1962, any interest in, security of, claim against, or property or contract right of any kind affording a source of influence in the RICO enterprise, and any proceeds from the racketeering activity or unlawful debt collection. Section 1963, Division B, specifies the type and nature of quote-unquote property subject to criminal forfeiture under the RICO Act, including real property and tangible and intangible personal property, and extends criminal forfeiture to any property that is subsequently transferred to a person other than the defendant, unless the transferee can establish that he or she is a bona fide purchaser. Section 1963, Division D through M, sets forth certain procedures that the government must follow to dispose of property forfeiture under the RICO Act. RICO criminal forfeiture is imposed in addition to any other sentence for a violation of Section 1962. A criminal forfeiture under a criminal forfeiture order is a part of the defendant's sentence, not part of the substantive offense of conviction. So I think for the purposes for right now, I will break that off there. Now, you know what, we'll read this section here in the guideline. Let's see, it says generally, the guidelines instruct users to determine the applicable Chapter 2 offense guideline by referring to Appendix A, statutory index, for the offense of conviction, i.e., the offense conduct charged in the indictment or information of which the defendant was convicted. For a violation of the RICO Act, 18 U.S.C. Subsection 1962, Appendix A specifies the offense guideline at Subsection 2E1.1, unlawful conduct relating to racketeer influence and corrupt organizations. Section 2E1.1 instructs the court to apply the greater of two alternative base offense levels. There are no specific offense characteristics. Section 2E1.1 refers the court to other offense guidelines based on the underlying racketeering activity. The commentary in subsection 2E1.1 directs the court to look ahead to certain parts of Chapter 3, in parentheses adjustments, and, in some instances, to Chapter 4, in parentheses criminal history, to determine the appropriate offense level for the RICO offense. In many instances, the offense level for the RICO offense will be determined by the offense level for the underlying racketeering activity due to the wide variety of criminal conduct covered under subsection 2E1.1. So for those of you listening, and if any of you are law enforcement, police officers of any type, whether employed by a municipal corporation, as a city, county, or state level, you really need to be aware of this, because if you understand the federal jurisdiction, I won't get into all that, but essentially, the United States jurisdiction is at 10 square miles in Washington, D.C., so everything outside of that is considered a foreign corporation or foreign entity. So all of you acting in the states in your roles in various state and local governments are actual foreign entities. So just keep that in mind when it comes to the United States government. Because even though we call ourselves or call this country the United States, the United States government only exists in the 10 square miles in Washington, D.C. The states are granted authority by way of the Constitution and Supreme Court rulings that dictate what the states are allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. They have boundaries according to the Constitution, the federal Constitution, and the Supreme Court rulings. If they act outside the bounds of those laws and case law, that's what rulings are, they are acting as a rogue agent and do not fall under the guidelines. They do not qualify for limited immunity. they lose all of those protections because they are not acting in accordance with the guidelines and regulations and codes and laws that pertain to their positions and titles. It's very clear what these people are allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. And what they are doing is extremely unlawful. It is a long pattern of corrupt activity, usurpations of authority and power by use of propaganda, fear-mongering, threats of force and violence, threats on people's life and property, causing real harm to people, physical and harm to their property, damages to their property. This has to change. This absolutely has to change. It's one thing to hold people accountable that are a danger to society and possibly to themselves, even though that can be used sometimes arbitrarily against people because it's so corrupt. Nonetheless, what is going on these days and has been going on for a while in the courts and in the police departments and law enforcement and how they conduct business is unlawful. They are committing fraud on multiple different levels, not just trust fraud, but also fraud by way of actions depriving people of their God-given natural rights under color of law actions. This can't stand. It must not stand. These people need to be corrected. They need to do their jobs according to the laws that are established. And enough of this immunity talk and them getting a free license to do whatever they want. I don't know, maybe some of you heard the story about the law enforcement officer, I can't remember if it was a trooper or a sheriff, in I believe it was Texas, that was top of his department or whatever, with his policing skills or whatever you want to call it. And here the guy is tampering with evidence using marijuana vape pens that he confiscated from a so-called driver. Excuse me. And this is what goes on when they have no accountability. They hold people to a higher standards than what they hold themselves to. If that had been anybody else in a different vehicle, taking a hit or a drag or whatever you want to call it from a vape pen, while behind the wheel, while armed with a firearm, while working for the government, for crying out loud, I don't even want to think about what would happen to that man or woman or person, I guess, in that instance, because they are in that capacity, so they are the person. But if, dare you or I or, a pesky citizen do something like that, well, then you'll have your life turned upside down. You'll be thrown into a cage and be forced to pay the court money and have your time and energy stolen from you. And on top of all of that, you're forced to pick up the pieces of the damage caused by all that nonsense and terroristic activity. Because it's not like they give you the opportunity to take care of your responsibilities, to make sure that it's something, they'll be taken care of while you're in a cage, because they, think they can do that. enough is enough. I'm not the best at explaining and articulating all of this. I do my best at it. But there are others that do a much better job than what I do. I can only share my experience, my 2 cents, my opinion based on my experience, a little bit of wisdom, um, and some of this knowledge that I have been able to gain going through this process and dealing with these terrorists. I mean, let's face it. Let's be honest. Um, Never thought in a million years I would be saying something like that about police officers, but when they do things like what they do here, they are terrorists. There may be some good people in those roles. They may not all be bad. I'll give you all that. But unfortunately, the bad apples are the ones that spoil the whole bunch. And if I can't trust a couple of you, I'm not going to trust any of you. I can't. That's for my own security. And so if any of you law enforcement or police are listening, I want you to understand that this is nothing personal. I don't know any of you really personally at all. I would prefer not to have to deal with this, but I at this point I have no choice because I feel obligated to address this extreme malfeasance in office and these egregious crimes being committed against we the people. It's time for this to stop. You are not here, well, for the people, you are not here to be jackboot thugs, even though that's what you're taught. And that's what the system has designed you to be, has programmed you to be. You need to learn your role. And the sooner you do that, the better off we will all be. The sooner that all of this violence and all this nonsense will quell and possibly go away. But you all need to understand what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're allowed to do, and stop hiding behind your immunity. That's cowards. Those cowards do that. If you're not going to stand up and be a man or a woman and be accountable for your own actions, you are a coward. And for those of you that have bear false witness against me in these courts, I am going through a process, and this is not a threat, just a warning. I am going through a process. This is a verbal notice that the repercussions you won't be able to hide from through the federal government. I've been forced to take this route because, unfortunately, I have not been able to get remedy through the courts here locally and within the state. True judicial process and procedure has been cut off for us, for we the people. The only thing we have access to in these courts are administrative procedures, administrative tribunals. That's it. So even if you file a lawsuit, you might get lucky if you hire an attorney because they all work together. And if it's something really serious, well, if you knew your rights and if you knew what you were capable of without using an attorney, you could really, put the screws to them or whatever. But because people are ignorant and use an attorney, well, they'll work out a settlement or they'll work out something to make the complainant happy, make them feel like they got a fair deal, make them feel like they got restitution, so that way they don't force the issue or take it any further. Because if they realized what they were actually doing when they violate our rights, when they do all of these activities, these egregious activities, this malfeasance, when they do this, They don't realize. I don't, I hope for their sake that they don't know, that they are truly ignorant, because then it'll be easier for me to forgive them. But if they're not ignorant, if they know what they're doing and they're doing it anyway, I I don't know if I can find it in my heart to forgive someone like that. That can day in and day out profit from causing harm to people, allowing the system that they work for to chew people up and spit them out and profit off of the harm and the damage that's done under the guise, under the facade of justice, when all it is depriving people of rights under collar of law actions, and using that, conspiring together to commit trust fraud actions and securities violations to profit immensely. I can't even fathom the amount of money that these municipalities and these courts at different levels are making off of people's ignorance. Most, if not all, of the people in jail today, in prison, are there because of ignorance, because they didn't know their rights. They didn't know who they are or who they were. And they acquiesced, or they allowed an attorney to speak on their behalf and just rolled with the punches and took whatever they got. Don't get me wrong, some people probably deserve to be in prison. But that's neither here nor there in this conversation. The point of the matter is that if any of us, men or women, and or women, did any of the actions that these people are doing, we would be in state prison, federal prison, for possibly life, for kidnapping, extortion, human trafficking. The list just goes on and on. This is what I've been trying to get at. This is what I'm trying to convey to you all. Most specifically, if any of you are listening from Zanesville, Ohio, or Muskingum County area in Ohio, you all need to pay attention. This is what you all should be talking about amongst yourselves, amongst your family and friends. These are the things that need to be fixed before any of this other nonsense can even be an attempt to be fixed. We need to first work on what's right here in our backyard. Deal with these people that are not acting correctly. So with that, I will bid you all adieu. God bless.